Titans Beast World Tour Central City Issue 1. And what an interesting book this was. So let's try to do something different from the other one-shots so far, in that it had kind of a main story that it kept going back to throughout. And all the other stories by different writers and teams, they were kind of like set at the same time. So basically the framing device here is that Barry's in the main story with Irie, and he sends out a call for the other speedsters in the city, and then the other stories are when they hear his call and what they're up to. But then it sort of comes back round to them all being in the main story by the end. So I definitely preferred that as a concept. It seemed like it was trying to do something a bit smarter with the overall narrative technique. I will say, I have some bones to pick with some art here, because is it just me, or did Irie, Jay, and Maxine, who is Animal Man's daughter, who's also in this, and she's been friends with those kids from the previous Flash run.
Yep.
They all look like they were 20 in this issue.
Yeah. Their ages jump from, in some art, they look like kids, right? When we see Irie in like the Howard Porter stuff, they look like kids. And then in other ones, like the main part of it, they look older than Avery and Ace.
Yeah, like Irie runs in. It's the bottom of the first page. Irie runs in, and she looks as tall as Iris does, right?
For a hot second, I thought it was Jessie Quick.
Yeah, she looks too old. Nothing about her looks like a. I mean, she's maybe what, like 12, maybe at most.
Yeah, I mean, middle school at the most.
Yeah, if anything, more like 10-year-old is what I was thinking. So she comes in, and like, you know, she's been drawn like an adult, right? She's got all the curves and all that, and she's super tall. Her face looks older, and I'm like, what's going on here? Why does she look so old? And this is set during Beast World. This is just going on right now, so it's really weird. And the same kind of rings true for the other kids as well, for Jay and Maxine. But and Jay especially, like when he's in costume towards the end, like they're doing some wild things with his physique. Like his top of half of his body's like bulking up like he's Rob Liefeld on steroids.
I was gonna say he looks like Brock Lesnar, but now.
Like, but comically so. Like his upper half is so bulky. It's something wild's going on, and it's not even like I hate all the like. It sounds like I hate the artist who's doing the main story, and I don't actually think I do. I think there's other bits in it that I quite like, but I think those characters all look too old. It's almost like the artist just knows they can't do kids, so like, no, I'm not going to try. They're just going to be they're going to be 18 years old and just deal with it.
So thumbing through this, it's the Alex Packnottle story that starts with Jay and Maxine, and they're on a date, and it looks like Riverdale. This looks like
it's not. To be fair, I still think they look too old in that story though. It's not as bad, but they still look too old.
Yeah, but I'm looking. They look like teenagers, not like preteens.
Yeah, and
they're meant to be preteens because again, this looks like they're on a soda shop date on Riverdale. You know. And then it's just, you know, just art inconsistencies. But after the last two that we had, they were kind of just grab bags. I'll take the inconsistent art to at least there's a through line. Like I don't feel like I wasted my time reading this.
Yeah.
Like this, I felt like we got a good case of what was going on in Central City during Beast World.
Yeah, I will say most of the times when it cut away from the main story, I didn't enjoy those like cutaways that much, with the exception of the kids. Like the kids on their, so it's basically Jay and Maxine are on like a date, but he doesn't know it's a date, and it does play like they're young. It plays like, oh, they've never done this before, and it's, you know, like she's trying to flirt with him, and I enjoyed Irie. She finds out being kind of disgusted that they're on a date. It's kind of cute. It's all very pleasant. I enjoyed that. All the other times it cut away to the other stories by other teams, though, I found myself, because, you know, one of them is the Speed Force team, and we don't like that book, so obviously I wasn't really into the writing of that part of the story.
Oh, God. And then Circuit Breaker, I'm just not like... Joey, that character just feels superfluous.
What's so funny is it cut to Circuit Breaker, I'm like, okay, I vaguely... Like, that sounds familiar, but I don't remember who you are. And then someone mentioned the Still Force, and I was like, "Oh no, no!"
Yeah. That said, we got a good Piper appearance. I like when we can get Pied Piper showing up.
I mean, I don't mind Pied Piper, but it was in that story with Circuit Breaker, so I was just kind of checked out at that point.
Yeah. I will say too with the Speed Force story, while we're talking stuff that kind of annoyed us, I couldn't tell what was going on with the Garo spore, right? Because the way that it keeps jumping between Avery and Ace.
There's several pages during the fighting towards the end that I just straight up didn't know what was happening because it's just kind of a mess.
Yeah, and I was just like, like, I want to enjoy the story. I like it, you know, the whole idea of them trying to figure out as Flashes that how to deal with these spores. I just couldn't tell, like when it jumped from Avery to Ace, I couldn't figure out what the heck was going on. And then just, again, I don't care about this video game that the Ace is very infatuated with. But apparently it's a move from the game as it's able to disrupt, you know, Garo. So, I mean, I guess that it served its purpose there, is it shows us how the Flashes are going to be able to, you know, free these spores from people.
Yeah, I did think it was a bit like when he actually says the code out loud for what you do in the game to get the move. It felt a bit like, okay, you're trying really hard to be gimmicky, and I don't like it. This is why I didn't like Speed Force. I hated all the dialogue about video games and shit.
It reminded me why I didn't read issue 2. You know?
Oh yeah, for sure. So. But no, I did like the stuff with the kids the most, I think. I think they're really likable characters. The ongoing chemistry between them is quite nice. Maxine using her Animal Man powers to try and like fight back. And yeah, it is kind of interesting how her and her dad fit into all this when this is all animal based. So they should be kind of secret weapons. And they kind of are, because she's able to do a couple of fancy things with her powers in this. Like, you know, the end of the story. So the main thing they're dealing with in this story, and oh God, I just got to the first page where Jay's got his big bulky top half. It's actually horrible. I don't understand what they were thinking with this. Like, has he ever been shown when he's using his strength to actually like balloon?
Yeah, I remember, but it was when he first was learning how to use it. It's almost like because it's not quite the Speed Force, right? It goes into where he needs it. So I remember him having like a bigger top half to show that he was strong. But it was also because he was a kid, so it looked silly. So I figured that was the point of it. I mean, it makes me laugh, so at least there's points there, you know?
Yeah, I do like, you know, him and Maxine like sharing ideas, and then just, you know, the next panels, Ivory being like, "This is disgusting," like just because they're clearly being flirty, they're clearly like, agreeing with each other, and she doesn't like it. But anyway, the main gist of this whole story, other than the fact that the Beast World stuff's going on, is specifically that Godspeed has become like
a murder hornet.
A murder hornet. And he's using these powers to split up into multiple hornets. So that's what the main thing that they'll all try to deal with by the end of the story. And the way they resolve it all is that Maxine uses Iris to... Well, first of all, Irie and Maxine tell Barry and the Speedsters they have to let themselves be taken over by the spores, which does seem like a really silly idea. But they all turn into bees. And one of the things we were complaining about with the first couple of Beast World like issues is like, is there any logic or reason as to why certain people turn into certain things? I got the impression from this that Maxine used their powers to ensure that they all turn into the same animals. But they all turn into big bees, right? So we get all these like bees in like speedster colors. And the idea is that because they're now a hive, Maxine uses her powers and uses Iris as their queen to control them. So at the end of this tie-in, all the speedsters are still bees, but they're doing good things because Maxine and Iris are
because the hierarchy of a beehive.
So
which I liked. It was like a really smart take on the Beast World stuff.
Yeah, it was all right. It was fun.
And the way that Maxine's able to adjust the red, basically, and that's how she's able, because you see when the spores go into them, they get different. So like Avery ends up with like an eel, and Ace has like a muskox head and stuff, and so she's able to take those and turn them into bees, which I thought was, again, it feels like a story progression for Beast World.
Yeah, it feels like this may actually be important in the main story at some point, that the Animal Man characters can do this.
Yep.
That they can influence what creatures people are turning into. And then it's not like a hard rule. Just because Batman turned into a wolf initially doesn't mean that if it goes, let's say the spore leaves him and goes back in, it doesn't mean that he'll just turn into the same animal again.
Yeah. That said, it seemed all the Flashes turned into lizards at one point, right? Because Impulse is like one of those frilled lizards. Avery and Ace both turn into like, they almost like have like dinosaur heads and stuff. So I thought that was curious. Captain Cold is a polar bear though. Like, I want to be mad at it, but we got a polar bear wearing Captain Cold's glasses.
Yeah, that's funny.
It's so funny.
Yeah. That's a funny visual. Just to go back out to some art negativity, the story with Circuit Breaker and Pied Piper.
Yeah.
This was one again where I literally just didn't know what was happening for several panels because it was just all swirly action lines. It's the page where on the bottom right hand, Pied Piper says rats. They can never hold a steady beat. But most of the panels on that page, I couldn't tell you what was happening in them. It's just lots of swirls, and you get the sense that two of them are fighting, but it's all the colors are just being mashed together. And there's, I'm not a fan of the art on that particular story.
Yeah, I won't disagree.
Yeah, that's Al Kaplan, who seems to both write and do the art on that one. But yeah, I think overall I appreciated that this tried to build a framework that everything sort of fit together in. I still feel that some of the individual stories that are sort of nestled within were mostly kind of fluffy, but I did like the one with the kids, and I did like that it all built to something at the end. So I at least felt like there was more going on in this one. And there was seeing all the bees. You know, you got the main Barry bee, you got the Wallace bee, you got the
one thing that Spurrier's doing, and I do appreciate it because when you have so many of these characters, it's trying to define Barry, and Barry's upset because he's no longer the fastest man, right? Because that's gone to Wally. I don't know if that is the best time to be addressing that is in this. I feel that should be a story point in the main book, right?
I mean, I think if it's important in the main book, it will probably come up in some other way in the main book. I actually kind of like that it made it feel like if you are reading that Flash run, which we are, then this feels like it fits into that run at the same time as it fits into the event, and it gives it a bit of a coherent, connected world feeling to it, where it's not just someone else randomly writing Flash in this story that doesn't connect up at all with what the status quo is in the main Flash book. This at least ensures, no, this is what the characters are going through. This is something the writers maybe even seeding for later on in his own run. It can be essential because you can't just assume that everyone reading the Flash is going to read the event and specifically this tie-in. But I can at least respect that it does feel like it does. It feels like the event's tying in to the ongoing Flash run as opposed to just tying in to the Flash in a way where it's just someone randomly writing, a generic, could be any time frame Flash character,
Right. Well, and then again, Spurrier had Barry's voice down about, how he's feeling, like he's the extra Flash now with the whole family. And part of the story for him to get this through is Irie kind of talking him up. Is like, no, you're the original. Like, You're the original Speed Force guy. We're all here because of you. So own that. And on top of that too, I also like that the whole Flash legacy, when Maxine's trying to talk about Jay and he says that it's a silly hat and Jay corrects her. I just thought that was funny that younger Jay's protecting, or not protecting, but sticking up for older Jay wearing his, Mercury hat. I think it's called a kettle hat or something, like a kettle helmet, something along those lines. Just little character stuff like that I really appreciated. And those are both the Spurrier stuff too. So
I also, which is a good sign because he's writing the Flash run. If we're finding more to like with his Flash writing, that's good. I did also really like that pretty much everyone was like, who's this animal chick? We don't know who this is. Who is this girl? I got a chuckle out of that and no one knowing who that was. It's interesting because I think it is definitely a flawed book overall because you have some of those like shorter stories within that I do think are a bit of a chore to get through. And to be honest, one or two of them I started just kind of skimming towards the end of them to get back to the...
Yeah.
Because, I get it. They're hearing the call. They're going to come and join the rest of the characters. What they were doing on their own almost doesn't matter that much.
I almost forgot Circuit Breaker's in this book, and then we started talking about it.
Yep.
Because I skimmed through it when we got to that one. But I do appreciate that, if we're going to have more tie-ins, if we're going to have more tie-ins for Beast World, I hope they're more like this and less like the other two we read.
I'm not feeling confident, Matt.
Yeah, true. One next week. Let's look.
I'm not feeling confident. We'll find out at the end of the show what's next week. But what are you rating Titans Beast World Tour Central City?
I'm gonna give this a. I'll give it a 6.5.
That's actually what I was going to give it.
Wow.
I think it's just not quite there to be called good, just because you do have to put up with some of those other stories that are sort of shoved into the middle of it. But it's definitely the best of the tie-ins so far, because it feels like it has an overall idea and like thing that it's building to. So, yeah. And if nothing else, the fact that this is the issue that has Jay and Maxine on their first date means that there's at least something in here that makes it like, oh, this is actually at least somewhat important if you like these characters, because they're doing something that's actually the next step in their journey. So that's something. That's worth something.